Hello, everybody. We're pleased to share with you about our community disaster pilot project in the town of High River, the community hardest hit by the 2013 Alberta floods. So while conducting research in High River on the social aspects of flood management, including the preparation phase of disasters, I kept hearing from interviewees that despite having experienced what was at that time the biggest provincial emergency, residents were not necessarily better prepared for future floods or other types of disasters, and that this was an important need. I wondered if the low uptake of disaster preparedness at the household level was common across Canada. And yes, it is. About 80% of Canadians agree that disaster preparation is important. However, only about 40% have actually undertaken activities to be prepared. So this puts pressure on limited municipal emergency response resources. In addition, there's a gap in culturally appropriate disaster programs. So wanting to find ways to address these gaps, I turned to the literature on disasters and found three important clues. First, there are leaders or examples around the world who have community disaster preparedness that's really high. In Netherlands, Cuba, and Chile, they have neighborhood-based approaches to disasters, which are successful in reducing the number of casualties in floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes. For example, in the Netherlands, they have flood brigades, which are made up of residents who are specially trained for certain actions during a disaster. For example, putting up special barriers to keep rising floodwaters out. In Cuba and Chile, they perform mock disasters annually in schools and in workplaces and have designated people to check up on to see if they're all right. Second, relationships and social ties are crucial for preparedness and recovery to enhance community resilience. And third, disaster preparedness programs are more successful when they're led by the community rather than external institutions, and when the community takes ownership, which High River certainly has. So to address the gaps in emergency preparation and response at the community level, and to increase its success by ensuring it was community-led, the We're Ready pilot project was developed and implemented in May 2016, together with the town of High River and some volunteer residents. So we had two workshops, one for the Filipino community and one for the general geographic community. So the purpose of the workshop was to facilitate communities in designing and implementing their own disaster preparedness programs through fun and engaging community building activities. So being prepared for emergencies and having the knowledge and resources to respond adequately is important because it can reduce confusion and distress, prevent injury, save lives, minimize or avoid damages, and it was meant to be complementing existing emergency plans, and this was our goal. So the deliverables included hazard and evacuation maps, communication maps, and a community capacity inventory.
I was approached by Lisa to engage Filipino community in High River to this workshop. And for us to be most effective in reaching a wide range of people, we determined that we needed to include participants from all four quadrants of High River and ensure they represented all the Philippines. Because Philippines consists of over 7,000 islands, and although Tagalog is our main language, in different regions, many different dialects are spoken. And by ensuring that we have individuals from different regions, we felt our reach will be broad. We are happy that we represented all of them, because people who immigrate stay connected or acquaint themselves in an individual who immigrated in the same area, and we hope that they would encourage their friends to either attend or share their information learned during the workshop. We also recognize that interpreter would be very beneficial, especially there are many emergency preparedness related terms that are quite technical and specific. For example, Blizzard, it is not a common term used in a tropical country like Philippines, and for specific term, translation can be very difficult. I provided a one-page translated terms to the participants, and as interpreter, I was able to circulate around the room to the groups who are working their activities, and I was able to help them in the terms and instructions as well as the language they would use in their group presentation. As an interpreter also, I need to plan because it takes time to repeat what the presenter is saying to the audience. We felt also that we have even more participants than 22, except for the fact that they were called out a last-minute overtime shift because most of the immigrants in High River are working in a meat processing facility, which is Cargill, and all of them are working night shift. And also we need to plan for people to just drop in and not register ahead of time. Also plan for children because in the preparation of the workshop, we announced that children are not allowed, but it worked out just fine that they were there. They sat with their parents and also help in the activity, and some of them just go out in an adjacent room and play.
So listed is a description of all the activities, and I will speak about a few of them. So in order to fulfill our vision of this workshop being successful and worth the time and effort of its participants, we elected to provide activities that would build on knowledge and strengths and that would give the participants some takeaways. To start the day's activities, we knew we needed something fun and engaging, but we're hoping to choose an activity that had added value as well. Thus, the resource bingo was born. A bingo card was created that was both visual and descriptive. Participants were tasked to circulate around the room and locate individuals who either possess a specific resource, skill, or experience. The targeted individual would initial the box, and each person could only initial one box. There were 25 boxes, and we chose resources that may be needed in an emergency, ranging from a barbecue to a generator, skills ranging from simply knowing your neighbors to possessing emergency training, and experiences ranging from practicing your home evacuation plan to living through a typhoon. Maybe not surprisingly, given this group, typhoon experiences were actually greater experiences than blizzards. Not only was this a fun activity that got participants engaging and connecting with one another, but this list was later used during another activity when groups were addressing their community plans and needed to draw on identified skills and resources. The activities that followed were designed to build one on top of another, beginning with sharing previous disaster lessons and experiences. Groups focused on what worked well, what didn't, and this gave context to the session as emergency then wasn't just theoretical. This was followed by evacuation maps where groups used their creativity and craft supplies to denote features and routes on community maps. Following this activity, each group was given a different emergency scenario ranging from a weather event to a fire and was tasked with addressing questions such as, how did you learn about the emergency? Where would you get your information? How would you verify this information? Were you looking for anybody in the emergency? Who was looking for you? This brought up many interesting questions, and ideas were challenged, such as, do not call 911 for just information. It was apparent that people want more information, and this activity highlighted that we could benefit from a thoughtful approach to emergency preparedness. Finally, these skills were put to the test with an off-site mock disaster game, where the goals were to create a buddy system and communication plan, identify safe meeting points, and simulate first aid emergency. The participants really got into this final activity, attacking it with fervor and adding in a lot of realism by going as far as hiding throughout the entire scenario. We identified a couple of important things, such as clearly explaining what the out-of-bounds parameters are, so people don't go too far, and putting in time limits to be a missing victim. Overall, participants took home increased knowledge of their community, they identified their skills and abilities, and considered evacuation and communication plans they could employ themselves as they developed their own preparedness plans. The pilot project was successful with the specific activities and overall workshop rating high. This quote from one of the participants, "It's better to be together than alone," captures perfectly what the workshop was trying to achieve, creating relationships for resilience. The activities provided opportunities for participants to build on existing social ties, although more so for the Filipino community workshop than the one the following day, where the participants just simply didn't know each other as well. The implication is that it may be more effective to work with groups with already existing social ties, such as neighborhoods, immigrant groups, seniors from a facility, school groups, etc. As the quote below, demand for more training to help in the community in times of disaster demonstrates, community leads emerged who were interested in further training and continuing to build on the workshops. To date, the following activities have been implemented. Judy McMillan-Evans, over there, is the chair of the Cataract Condo Complex, and she presented about the We're Ready workshop. Together with the condo board, they developed a risk management plan and action for various types of events. Out of We're Ready, they became aware of how few people understand what to do in a crisis, but now they have a plan. At a recent FCIS Foothills Advisory meeting, we addressed how we as local service providers can support the immigrant population and others we serve in emergency preparedness. As a result, local first responders have developed an interactive presentation geared for the Filipino communities in High River and Okotoks, targeting preparedness and response. For the first time, they will be engaging an interpreter for the sessions as well as providing translated materials. Finally, Carly Benson has been instrumental in launching NeighborFest, community block parties. This program will provide a block party starter kit, including a food voucher, emergency preparedness information, and icebreaker games to any neighborhoods hosting a block party from May 19th to June 25th. With May being Emergency Preparedness Month in High River, the town is encouraging people to get out, meet your neighbors, and make connections we recognize are the backbone of preparedness. In the words of Dr. Brian Cook from the School of Geography at the University of Melbourne, education is not engagement, and indicates that a shift away from education-based activities towards a more collaborative approach towards disaster risk reduction would be more effective. We have developed the We're Ready website to provide free resources to replicate the workshop at other locations, including activity instructions that can be modified to suit the community's needs. Anyone can go to this website, gather a group of friends and neighbors, and create their own community disaster plan to help make their communities more resilient. Future activities include interest in implementing the workshops in Red Deer and Edmonton, and recognizing that preparedness is a shared responsibility at all levels of our community. Carly Benson has the goal of organizing an emergency management community advisory group where community members can become advocates and agents of change in the town of High River, where community groups would look to the town for support in planning, hosting, and executing their own emergency preparedness activities. Last but not least, this project would not have been possible without funding for the Center for Community Disaster Research at Mount Royal University and the Social Science and Humanities Research Council.